Hello and welcome everybody to our today's interview on MindGourmet. My name is Lina Kaiser and I'm the co-founder of MindGourmet. And just in case you're wondering where my strange accent is coming from and maybe some interesting sentence constructions, that's because I'm German. And we from MindGourmet are dedicated and passionate about serving you the best food for thought. So stay tuned and welcome with me my very special guest, composer and dear friend, Craig Young. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Nina. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here with us today. And here means in this case, actually me chatting in my late afternoon with you from Munich and you being in your studio in Canada, right?
Yeah, it's just lunchtime here. It's almost noon. So
what a truly international conversation.
Yes.
Now, dear listeners, let me introduce you a little to Craig before we jump into our conversation about music and composing, surrendering to the creative flow, and much more. And you have to know, when I asked Craig in preparation for our interview, I asked him to send me a description of his musical journey and some information about him. And he just sent me a beautiful letter. And this is exactly what I'm reading for you now. Ironically, I grew up with very little interest in music. I took piano lessons around the age of 10 and didn't like it at all. I found it a chore and have vivid memories of a stern teacher hitting me on the fingers with a pencil. These days, my guidance comes from a more inspired source, as you will soon learn. My first album was on tape and I listened to it over and over. It was Invisible Touch by Genesis, and it opened the door to an appreciation of other classic music of the day like Pink Floyd, The Doors, and other bands who seemed to push the boundaries of music and connect with the emotion. In high school, I discovered the fun of music, playing a synthesizer rather than a piano, and eventually teaming up with other musicians and playing in bands. During university years, I continued playing in bands, but was never really comfortable in the spotlight, so I became more interested in the art of composing. What followed after university was a 25-year period of virtual musical seclusion. For whatever reason, I didn't end up collaborating with other musicians and really shared my music with others. I also had a very tough time playing in front of other people and an even more difficult time connecting with the emotion of a piece in front of others, even those who were close to me. The music never stopped, though. Despite my work life going in a very different direction, I continued to play it in seclusion, compiling literally hundreds of songs that no one ever heard, all the while fighting a feeling that I was supposed to be doing something more with the music, and that my path, although successful by most standards, was not fulfilling at a deeper level. In the last few years, everything has changed. Something woke me up. Something pushed me to a new level of understanding, and eventually the life I had was not enough. I'm an avid reader, and my areas of interest had shifted from business and self-help to a more spiritual realm. I started meditating regularly, and I studied the writing and work of some of the brilliant minds of our time and some great thinkers from the past. I realized the power of thought, the energetic nature of our universe, and became acutely aware of my subconscious conditioning. I opened up to the fact that there is so much more around us than what we perceive through our standard physical sense. Other teachers and mentors also came into my experience to help propel the journey, and I appreciate their influence so much. The impact that this awakening had on the music was profound. Creativity started to flow from a deeper level, and I ended up with a series of compositions that I just had to share. I'm so proud of them, but at the same time, I realize they come from a place beyond me and that I'm simply the conduit. The more I relax and allow, the stronger this connection grows, and the more the music simply flows through. What I hope to do is share this music with those who can sense the level of connection and feel where it comes from. From my perspective, the music is a bridge to a higher level of energy and vibration. I'm truly lifted during the creative process and also when listening back to these songs. I feel so privileged to be able to bring the same joy to others. I hope this music brings you a sense of peace, calm, inspiration, joy, and a connection to higher energies. This has become my true purpose and has set me on a new path of creativity, contribution, and connectedness. And to complete the information for everybody who is listening in, Craig is 48 years old. He lives in a small town called Grimsby, located about an hour outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Craig is happily married to his wife, Jamie, and they have 3 children, a daughter, Emily, who is 12, a son, Leon, who is 10, and their youngest daughter, Evelyn, who is just 5. Thank you, Craig, for this beautiful introduction. Are you ready to dive into our conversation, or is there anything else that needs to be added?
No, I'm ready to dive in. That was a great summary. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So can you please describe for us what brought you to the change in your life of sharing your music with others, allowing your music fully into it, opening up, sharing it? Did you have a specific experience that was the catalyst? You actually said something woke you up. Would you share what happened?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any specific event or catalyst. I think it was more of a gradual awakening and realization, and just a growing frustration with where I was at in life. I just have always been a bit of a thinker and reader, and realized there's more to life than a job and money and the material. And through reading, through meditation, I just opened up more to what's sort of beyond just our physical reality and day-to-day efforts to survive, make money. So I don't think it was an instant shift. It was just a very gradual sort of awakening. And it has, as you read out in the introduction, it has really impacted the music.
Mm-hmm. And when you were talking about the frustration of the life we're living in contrast to what is actually calling us, I can really relate to this. And what you and I actually have in common is that we, at a certain point, decided to jump and dive into what makes us fly, which for you is composing and now also sharing your music. And for me, with MindGourmet, it's inspiring others. But as we know, change often brings a lot of vulnerability with it, because we show ourselves in a new light and we are still surrounded by our old reality and relationships. How does it feel for you to grow into your new you? And how do you deal with the challenges that come with it?
I'm finally at an exciting point with all of that. The sort of fear of judgment, the fear of change, it still lingers at points, but I'm beyond that now, and the change is sort of exponential. Once you sort of live what you're supposed to do, I think the more you do that, the more the fear of going back to the old life grows, and you just shift more quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in your introduction, you said that eventually creativity flowed from a deeper level and you felt it come from a place beyond you. Can you describe how creating your music and being connected to this powerful energy feels like?
I think if anybody has truly meditated and connected, they will have a sense. If anybody has been engaged in an activity where it's less analytical and you're in flow, there is a connection. It's so easy to get in the way. Relating to music, for example, I can sit and compose, and I know if I play a C chord, a G chord is going to be a good fit next.
Yeah.
F and then whatever else, but that's analytical, and that's one level of composition. But to sit at a piano or to sit at any sort of creative endeavor and quiet your mind, whether it's writing or painting or music, if you just sort of quiet your mind, and for me anyway, it just sort of flows through. There's a difference. There's less thinking and more flow. And that's a hard thing, I think, to describe fully. But if anybody has experienced it, I think they'll know what I'm describing.
Mm-hmm. And I think you already answered part of my next question, but I'd like to ask from a different angle. So allowing and surrendering to this creativity flow, the power beyond us, or however we might call this, something that often feels so much bigger than we are ourselves, can be challenging because sometimes it seems that you cannot make it happen on demand because actually you need to allow and surrender. So do you have ways to get into this creative flow, or does it just get to you?
I think first of all, the thought that it can't happen on demand is limiting. I think it's always there, but if you have the thought that it can't happen, or there's a challenge to connect, then that makes the connection more difficult. For me, playing and getting sort of lost is like being in a meditative state. So for me, if I'm playing, it often helps to meditate first, or at least to spend 2 or 3 minutes with my eyes closed, just focusing on breathing and just letting everything become quiet. And then I can put my fingers on the piano and usually something nice will come through. And even playing with my eyes closed is often a good trick. It just blocks out any other stimulus. But just to be alone with sort of a quiet space, my fingers on the piano, and no other distractions or thoughts. Maybe that's it, just clearing your mind of external thoughts before getting into any sort of creative endeavor is helpful.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not in the right headspace, then it's very difficult to create. If you're distracted by the worries of the day and you haven't let that go, then you're just not going to get into that space.
Mm-hmm. And headspace is a nice word. I didn't know it before.
Yeah.
Speaking about creativity and creation, well, creation needs this connectedness. And if we want to share our gifts and our creation, it actually needs courage. And I think I can imagine that many of our listeners have this something inside of them that knocks on their inner door and wants to be heard and ultimately shared. But the thought to be seen and heard and maybe hurt feels terrifying. Can you share some advice or encouragement?
Yeah, because I was locked in that sort of loop of wanting to share, and then the fear of it not being received well, wanting to share, and then wondering what would happen if people did like it. It knocks you out of your old conditioned reality that so many people are comfortable with, even though it might not be truly serving. Mm. So for me, again, it was a gradual shift, but I think sometimes focusing on what will happen if you don't share, what a waste your talent might become. If at the end of life you look back and you realize you had all of this potential and you never shared it, then I think sometimes looking at the opposite can push you along. And I think the more you share, and share with the right people as well, realizing that not everything you put out there is going to connect with every single person. But if you put it out there, you'll reach the right audience that does resonate with whatever your message is, or your music, or your creation. And once a few people do resonate with what you're putting out there, it's inspiring to keep going.
Yeah. And I like the idea that putting your gifts out there means that somebody can enjoy them, and that it actually would be so sad if they couldn't, because we wouldn't put it outside there. And I can truly say, when I listen to your music, it inspires me, it soothes me, it relaxes me, and I listen to it often. In times I need calm, in times I feel like meditating, in times I need inspiring ideas for my work or for thoughts I would like to share with others. So do you have any special recommendations for our listeners how or when to optimally listen to your compositions?
Well, I appreciate your comments, first of all. It's always really nice to hear what listening to the music does for other people, because for me, it does the same. It takes me away. I have a bias, obviously, and sometimes I wonder how it impacts other people. So it is nice to hear that. But the music that is coming through right now, maybe it's because it's piano centered. Maybe it's because I've been doing a lot of work with meditation lately. It's very calm. To me, it connects me to something just sort of beyond this physical reality. It's soothing. It's not the kind of music that you're just gonna. And I think you could say this about a lot of music. You don't get the most out of it if it's just sort of background and you've got other things going. I think for people to truly appreciate a piece of music, you've got to be there, present with it, with headphones, without distractions. Same if you're looking at a piece of art, reading a book, listening to an interview like this, just putting your entire focus into something. Obviously you're going to get more out of it. But yeah, with the music, it's meditative, it's calming, it's quiet. I would love it if people who have had a stressful day would just sit for 5 minutes, put some headphones on and just calm and center themselves, even if it's not a full meditation. And but I'm at a point where I would love to get more feedback, and it's nice to hear that kind of feedback. But that's what the music does for me.
Yeah, and I was just, while you were talking, thinking, you said you have hundreds of songs nobody ever heard. So what about those treasures? Are you going to put them out there?
That's something I think about quite often, that it would be a waste not to put them out there. But I also see them, there's value in having worked on the creative process. It's been a learning process. So even though there are hundreds of songs, I would rather sit and connect and create something current. And I think even by doing that, I'm still connecting to all of that work that I've done in the past, but it feels like more of sort of development to get to this point and to evolve the music to this point. So I appreciate it, even though it's just sitting there stored on a hard drive.
Yeah, because you know it's there and that you created it.
Yeah.
And you can always reactivate it or change it or make something else.
And I'm sure there are elements of it that are coming out in the current pieces as well. So it's not lost there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's good. And there's one more thing I want to talk with you about, because it's just amazing. I think it was a few months ago that you created a soul piece for me, and you can explain later what it is. But I remember when I listened to it for the first time, I felt really known, as if it speaks to me, and it stayed that way ever since. And I listen to it often. And in one of our talks we had in the past, you mentioned that you create these soul pieces for people who are interested in listening to how you translate their energy into music. So would you like to share some information about what a soul piece is, and how people might have one if they want?
Sure. To be honest, it's a concept that I never would have had an awareness of until about 3 years ago. I had a spiritual reading, which again was sort of a new experience for me. I transitioned from a very analytical person with a curious mind to somebody now who is really opened up to possibilities and have a better sense of what's going on out there and energies and connection. So I was told in this reading that I had the ability to connect to people's energy and translate the vibration of their soul into a piece of music. So I've been working on this and experimenting with a few different people. And anytime I've done that for somebody, there has it has resonated, as you described. Mm-hmm. There's a feeling of familiarity. So it's a really exciting part of music that I'm trying to evolve. But my process there, and it helps if I get to know somebody at least a little bit. But if I was to create a soul piece for somebody, I would just sort of go into a quiet space, imagine that person, connect to that person's energy, and it just sort of changes what comes through when I play the piano. I know if I'm sitting at the piano that it's something that has come more from me. It's a more typical composition versus connecting to somebody, thinking about them. There's an energetic change that you can recognize when you're sort of tapped into another person. And then when playing the piano, which is where I start most compositions, you can hear a difference when it's linked to another person. Mm-hmm. And that's when I know that this is a connection to somebody else. And it's hard to describe exactly what it is, but it's I guess in a nutshell, a translation of somebody's energy into a piece of music. And it has been described as a soul piece. But it's a really exciting part of my creativity that's coming through.
So if somebody is interested in contacting you for a soul piece, would you recommend them to go to your homepage and find the contact information?
On my website. My website is craigyoungmusic.com. And from there's some information, there's contact information, and just a quick email back and forth, and that's something that I can discuss. I feel like it has to be the right person in a lot of ways, somebody that I can connect with and resonate with. But I'd be happy to have inquiries. Just drop me a quick email from the website.
Very good. So we've been talking so much now about your music, about creativity, about allowing, surrendering, getting it out. Can you make us listen to something too?
Yeah, I can do that.
I think, dear listeners, we're probably not adding so much here because I would like to leave you with those beautiful, beautiful impressions of Craig's music. And so I'm giving you a little information later how you can connect with him. But for now, let me just say thank you, Craig. Thank you so much for giving us company today and sharing so many precious insights in your music with us.
Well, thank you for taking an interest and having me on the show. That was great. I'm flattered.
I'm flattered too. So, dear listeners, you'll find all the important information about Craig below this interview. There's also a link for a free download of his beautiful composition music box. And if you'd like to hear more, just come over to our thought store on mindgourmet.com, where you can listen into his beautiful, inspiring music and purchase it if you like. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Craig, before we say goodbye?
Nothing in particular, just a thank you to everybody that has taken an interest and listened, and a thank you to you. Very grateful to have had the experience.
Yeah, very grateful. Me too. And so thank you so much, everybody, for listening in. And until next time, bye.